So Pat says, I have my favorite stocks that I've used for married put trades. I'm curious how closely they meet your suggested search criteria for stocks or options using the PowerOptions selections for weekly and monthly married puts. So in the search tool, using the default searches, our preferred married put structure, or it's the radioactive trading technique using puts that are 5 or 6 months out in time to keep the risk to single digits. But we also have default screens if you just want to use monthly protection, weekly protection, depending on what your strategy is, weekly collar spread positions also. So that's what he's talking about. But in the search tool, there's a function where I can say, hey, I've got 180 results. Is my stock in here? Let me put in my stock. No, it's not there. Why is it not there? All right. So that's what Pat is asking for. No results were returned for my favorite stock. Is there an easy way to determine which criteria for married puts and my stock does not meet? In these situations, we've done this before in presentations, Pat, that's okay. Some of them were years ago. But when I'm on a coaching session, this is when I show the research tool for the stock. Because more than likely, it's the stock position, some of the stock criteria that might be in the background that aren't meeting criteria. Let's just take an example real quick. Let's navigate back over to PowerOptions. And we're going to go into the married put tools here. All right, fantastic. Now, here we are at the married put main screen. Of course, you can see the blueprint here, some of our help centers, a covered call challenge, limited risk solution, the sketch, the free white paper that introduces our approach for the married put strategy. But let's go into the default search tool, as Pat mentioned. And instead of our preferred, there's MMYT still up there, but I'm in a better position there. Bulletproof, I think, by double digits and still having more profit. Our default search is the radioactive sorting by earnings per share growth, of course. But there's also some, I think it's not here. I'm sorry, I apologize. I think you're in the sample searches, Pat, aren't you? Broker recommends short-term married puts 60 days out in time. I think this might have been what you're using. Okay. So let's just lower the risk down to 7%. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, yeah, sorry about that, folks. Oh, that would help. Wow. Okay. Oh, I know why. Okay, just ignore me for a minute, folks. So normally I'm using a different search, and I've got those limiters. Here we go. All right. Now, what are the base criteria for the search? In any strategy with 4 sections: the options, stock technicals, stock fundamentals, and lists. In this particular screen, we're not looking for any stock lists. We do prefer to use this preferred company list for the default married put screens in the search. So if you just went in, Pat, to the default married put search, the radioactive search, and change it to a monthly or a weekly, number one, it has to be a stock in that list. Okay, if it's not in that list, it won't appear. But we're going to walk through how to change that in just a moment. But the options criteria, stock between $15 and $60, I'm sorry, days to expiration between 15 and 60, is that monthly I was talking about. I changed the risk to 3 to 6.5%. Option ask price less than 10. Well, naturally, if you have a $400 or $500 stock, you're looking at $250, $300 stock. The ask price is probably going to be greater than 10. This shouldn't be an issue. The bid-ask spread, range out of the money is not an issue. You saw me add the open interest and option volume. That's probably the biggest kicker. But shorter term, Pat, you're probably not running into that. For the technicals, we see some information. We're looking for stocks trading above the SMA 20 only. And in the fundamentals, hey, stocks between 7 and 150 and an earnings per share growth of greater than 5%. Idea there being, of course, the earnings are going to drive the company growth. Positive earnings will drive positive company growth. Now, in this fundamentals section is that search by symbol field Pat mentioned. Hey, I've got my loser. I've got PSTG in here. Do I have any married puts that match this default search between 15 and 60 days out in time, risk between 3 and 6.5%, some option volume and some open interest, bid-ask spread, not really that bad. And is it between 7 and 150? Hey, we just saw it was at 51.28. Earnings per share growth might not be greater than 5. Let's go ahead and submit it and see if it came up. All right, there's nothing, just as Pat said. My preferred stock, a stock that I'm looking at, it's not coming up in the default married put search results or in the sample searches that I linked to. Why? Now let me go to another window real quick, Pat. We were in our BH covered call. No, that's not the one I want. I'm sorry. I was going to go back to this window here. Typically what I'll do now, and if I saw any result on that search for PSTG, but not the result I wanted, why am I not seeing the other ones? But what I would do here is I go back to the main screen, go to PSTG in a separate window, and I'm going to go to quotes. This is going to take me to the stock research tool. Now, what do I know about the position just on the stock itself? I was looking for really only 3 stock criteria. Stock between, what was it, 15 and 500? I apologize. 7 and 150. I'm sorry, way off there. Okay, so I'm in that range. What else do we want? An earnings per share growth greater than 5. So far, we have that. But the stock needed to be above the SMA 20. We look for bullish stocks. The SMA 20 is 58.39. I'm at 51.29. That's why PSTG is not showing up in my searches. It's that one criteria. So you know you only have 5 or 6 basic search criteria, Pat, that are being used for the stock. If you're using that sample search, for example, if one of those 3 doesn't match, that's what's blocking it. It's likely going to be the SMA 20, or it's going to be the percent earnings per share growth, or the stock price, as I mentioned, since it's only up to 150. That's it. Am I right? Am I right? Let's take a look. Let's go back to that myriad put search. Let's go to the fundamentals. No, I'm sorry, it was the technicals. And let's take out the stock being above the SMA 20 as the default. Just put none versus none. Submit the search. There we go. There's my PSTG result. 21 days out, September 50 strike call, giving me a risk of 4.7% if I open the position today for the next 21 days after that disastrous earnings. Okay, so there's what it is. Now, why am I only seeing 1? Likely, Pat, the other situation is you might have this box checked in the default searches for 1 result per security. Let me wipe that out as well. Give me some more PSTGs. Okay, I got 2 now that match my 3 to 6% risk, 6.5% risk, obviously, the 50 and the October 50. Okay, it didn't go too far in or out of the money. My apologies in that case, okay? Further step, let's go into the default search. RadioActive sorted by earnings per share growth, Pat, the one that I would typically use. And I say, hey, I've got all these settings here that I want for the risk threshold. Hey, let me drop this max risk down about 4%. Actually, with I'm going monthly, let's drop it back down to where we're at 2.5%. And for a monthly or weekly, I don't want to take a risk of probably more than 5%. Maybe I'll put 6 just to be safe. Okay. Now, earnings per share growth again, stock above the SMA 50, historical volatility, average stock volume. But hey, I want to know, let's take a look at BAH. Let's take a look at Dennis's example. Okay. Nope, there's no stock options that meet my criteria. Why is that? Let's take a look here. We just saw the stock run up after a recent fall, BAH. All right, stock's at 158.78. My 50-day moving average is 151.93. Remember, I started with the stock above the SMA 50. So that's why I'm looking at that number. 50-day volatility, 0.30. Okay, that's above the required default of 0.25. Average stock volume, this is measured in thousands, Pat, so that's 300,000 shares per day. What's my average volume? I'm double that. That's all clear. Earnings per share growth, 12.25. Clear on that, right? The earnings per, oh, we didn't even have the, oh, there it is, greater than 50. Ooh, I'm sorry. I thought that was only at 5. Okay, so that's one issue. Let me take that out. Go to fundamentals. I'm going to drop my earnings per share growth down to 10. All right, and there's 1. But what happens now also, Pat, if it didn't come up? Hey, I'm above my average stock volume. I'm above my historical volatility requirement. I want some movement. I'm above my 50-day moving average. I'm within the stock price range that I wanted, and I changed it to the earnings per share growth, but it's still not here. Remember, we're looking against a specific stock list. And if that stock is not in any of those lists, it won't appear. Now, you can see that here too, but it's not. It would show you if it was in any of the recommended lists, S&P 500, S&P 5-star, IBD 50, those different ones, stocks that offer weekly options, it would appear here, but they're not here. BAH is not in any of the recommended search lists. So that's okay, because it still managed to come up with that other change in criteria. Actually, I didn't think it should have come up, honestly. I apologize, Pat. I don't think that should have come up because it's not showing me this is anything. I think that's that section. I'm going to have the programmers look at that after I get off the webinar. That's weird. It would have to be in the IBD 50 and weekly review combined in order to appear on this list, now that we've lowered the earnings per share growth. But that's it, Pat. That's where it is. You see the 3 or 5 different stock criteria that are being used in the search. Oh, I'm sorry. We wanted to go 30 days. You wanted to look for monthly. So let's keep the same criteria and go 10 to 40 days out in time. Is anything going to match for my BAH? Okay, no. Probably because the risk is too off. Let's just go 0 to 6. There we go. 1.3% for the September 160 strike. And of course, then I could evaluate other opportunities well in that scenario. All right. And where was I going on the next one? Yeah, if you wanted to do weekly, but BAH doesn't look like it offers weeklies in this case, so it wouldn't show up. But that's the key here. You've got a limited number, Pat, of criteria for the stock and for the option on the default married put screens. Open that window. Remember, put in your stock symbol and click on quotes. And then you can quickly look, what is my earnings per share growth? Oh, it wasn't greater than 15%. That's why it's not coming up. What is my SMA 20? Nope, it's above the current stock price. That's why it's not showing up. All right, because it's below, it's above that. So the stock price is currently below the SMA 20 or SMA 50. That's why it's not showing up. Oh, hey, maybe my average stock volume is less than 300,000 shares. That's why it's not showing up. It's just a few basic criteria you want to check. And this tool here, again, as I mentioned, if it does, I apologize. If it does come up, just click the more information button and go to research. But as you're saying, it's not coming up. So we want to open that separate window, type it into the top, go to quotes, and see which one of those 3 or 4 criteria is not being met by your specific one. Okay? All right. So, Pat, you're welcome. Pat says, excellent in-depth answer. Just what I wanted to know. Fantastic, Pat. I'm glad that solved your problem. Or gave you some guidance. I don't want to say solved your problem. It gave you some guidance there on what to look for. That research tool is very powerful. Whenever I'm on a coaching session, we do get emails like this a lot, Pat, but not a lot, but a few times, once every 3 or 4 months. Hey, I'm just trying out your search tool. I put in this criteria and my stock didn't come up. Why? I'm seeing that it's there and it matches what I'm looking for similar stocks. Okay, well, let's break down the option stock criteria. And other times that will happen. I've had people ask a similar question, Pat, where they look at the default RadioActive search and they'd say, okay, well, I went into fundamentals and I was looking for Riot in this trade and it doesn't match the criteria. Well, it's probably because Riot's not in this, but Riot also has a higher implied volatility. So it's likely that no put options that are even 20% in the money for Riot, 150 to 400 days out in time, have a risk of less than 9.5%. That's the other trick. So in this case, what I would probably do is say, okay, let me take out the risk threshold and run it. Oh, I got to take out the list too, because I know it's not in that list. Let me take out the list too and just go to no lists. So what is it now? It's the same thing I mentioned. It could be, I'm sorry, you're going to have to do extra steps here. I didn't mean to do that. I was hoping it would just pop up, but none versus none, because it's probably not trading above the 50-day moving average. The historical volatility is good. The volume should be good. Let's check that now. No. That's interesting. What am I'm missing something on this one. What am I missing? No list. Oh, it's right above $200. Haven't checked in a long time. Right under $9, I doubt it. Okay, so I'm stumped. Let me check. Again, what are we going to do? I'm going to go to Riot now. I'm going to go quotes. Oh, wow. Who knew? I'm sorry. I have not been paying attention to I don't pay attention to Bitcoin at all or any of the stocks involved in it. I didn't realize it was down to 750. I am really sorry, folks. That was Yeah, that was kind of silly. I didn't even think to look at that. I figured it was still up in the $40 to $50 range. Oh my. And still nothing. Okay. All right. Well, but that's I took the earnings per share growth out. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's the process you'd use. Missing on this. Volume's fine. Volatility's fine because I didn't cap it. I took off the cap on the risk. Okay. Let me just that is interesting. I'm missing something obvious. Oh, I left in the obviously if the stock's down that low, left in the earnings per share growth. Sorry guys. Oh, bad move, Mike. There you go. There's the riot position and implied volatility 0.8794. But oh, anyway, sorry. The 8 strike, 1 strike in the money is at a risk of 17.9%. Remember, we were trying to keep it under 20%, under 5 strikes in the money. And let's go to search by symbol. This is the March series. And the lowest risk I can get is 8.2%, being what am I? Open interest 123. Oh, I'm 46%. I'm 50% in the money with the 11 strike to get down to single digit risk. That's not what we look for. Even going just 20%, we're still at 13.7% at risk with the 9 strike. Yeah, not what we'd use for a married put position. Volatility is too high. Risk is too high in that scenario. Sorry, I missed that. I don't know what I was thinking about looking at the stock price and then the other one as well. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, this also helps you see what, I mean, there are stocks I still trade. You've heard me mention this before. Pat commented, I apologize. This way you can see what deficiency compared to the default criteria that you have research background that my stock has. And it might not be so much a deficiency. What I mean by that is there are times I'll say honestly, Pat, about 92 to 93% of all the positions that I post in my portfolio in the Fusion portfolio at RadioActive Trading come from that default married put search. And, probably 98% of earnings trades do. But occasionally, if I think we're in a troubled market or we're nearing a bottom, but I'm not sure if we're there at the bottom yet, I have touchstone stocks that I like to go to. Dividend paying stocks that are a little bit higher price, but lower volatility that don't match the default criteria we have here, the 25%. These are things that used to be Kraft, but now, of course, it's Mondelez, Johnson & Johnson, things that pay a good, reasonable dividend that don't take too much of a hit. But if we're not quite at the bottom, but I think we are, I'm still opening new positions. I'm getting in position to get a dividend. I have the opportunity to do income methods. But if the market starts to recover, these aren't going to recover because they don't have a high beta, but I'm still in a good position where I can take a quick profit on it eventually 40, 50, 60 days away, and then use that money that I had in reserve and a little bit of safety and extra safety with the married put with some dividends, maybe some income methods, take that and then move into some more active stocks that match that 25% volatility and other criteria. So that other 5 or 10%, 5 to 7% of the time that I open a married put that's not from this search, it's either something that I really kind of like but didn't match the criteria just as yours, and I look at why. Is it because it's just not trading above its 50-day moving average, but I think that's okay? Is it because it only has a 2 or 3% earnings per share growth where we're looking for 15? Maybe that's okay. It's not in the list, the IBD list, or it has a volatility that's lower. So some of those stocks I've done okay with, but again, it's only 7 to 8% of the time that I open a position that's not directly from our default preferred criteria here on PowerOptions for the RadioActive sorted by earnings per share growth.